Hello everyone, my name is Janie Rodriguez. I'm from Carlos University at Miami campus. I'm taking organizational training and development, and I want to give you a short training for my class about sexual harassment. The objectives that we're gonna to be covering in this training are to define workplace sexual harassment and to outline procedures for filing complaints, investigating sexual harassment claims, and using appropriate disciplinary measures in the case of violation. I want to start this training with a short video of the New York City Commission on Human Rights.
I was always in a good mood. Then it happened.
My coworker approached me from the back, grabbed me, and pressed down on my shoulders hard.
I tried to get away, but he pressed down on me even harder.
The things she said to me while laughing sarcastically.
Does your husband please you like this? Does he get you excited?
With his hands on me, I was shaking and numb.
I was physically there, but emotionally far, far away. I can't believe my coworker thought he could touch me that way. It made me never want to do anything or go anywhere. It's not just flirting, just a hug, or just a joke. There is no excuse. This is sexual harassment, and New York City is ready to help and fight for you.
Now that we can see this video that is a letter of a victim of sexual harassment in the work, I want to start defining what is sexual harassment. Sexual harassment, according to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, is an unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature constitute sexual harassment when this conduct, explicit or implicit, affects an individual employment, unreasonably interferes with an individual's workplace, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. We're gonna define or see sexual harassment in three forms. The first one is verbal, the second is visual or physical. These conducts of a sexual nature that is unwelcome, unwanted, and repeatedly made by the harasser. And sexual harassment get divided into categories. The first one is quid pro quo, that is something for something, or this for that. Some examples can be perpetrated by someone in position of power, demand a favor in exchange for benefits, give a promotion or a termination. And the second one is a hostile work environment. This is a severe or pervasive enough to create a work environment that a reasonable person would consider intimidating, hostile, or abusive. For something to be considered sexual harassment, it matters what the person who's being harassed thinks. It doesn't matter if the person wasn't doing the harassment thinks it's okay, harmless, or not sexual or welcome. Sometimes people say they think you like it or don't have a problem with it. It's still harassment if the behavior is something you do not want or find offensive. I want you to see this short video is an example of a hostile work environment in a factory.
Can't you take a joke?
No, he could have at least said thank you.
I know. I am so sorry about what just happened. I mean, I had no idea that they planned on bringing that gift.
I know. I know they're just trying to liven things up around here, but sometimes they can carry things too far.
Well, I know that you've said something to them in the past, but it seems to be getting even worse. I mean, the joking around, the gutter language. And what about that mug that Mary brought in?
I don't know what more I can do. You know, I'm starting to hate to come to work some days.
Playful teasing and pranks often go too far and can contribute to an atmosphere where people feel uncomfortable at work. Remember, it's not about your intentions or your feelings, it's about the other person's perception of the behavior.
Watch the reactions of individuals when they're exposed to particular types of conduct. When you see somebody stop laughing or frown or get upset, it's a very good indication that the conduct's not welcome.
The standard is, could it offend a reasonable person? And if it could, and it does offend this person, then it's crossed the line.
No one should have to dread coming to work because of the harassing conduct of his or her coworkers. Remind your people that if someone's behavior is bothering them, they need to say something. And tell your employees that if someone complains about their behavior, they should stop immediately.
Sexual harassment.
Now that we see this video, we shall know too that employees only have to prove that the behavior was offensive to someone, even if it was not indeed received. I want to let everyone know that we have the sexual and non-sexual harassment in the workplace. The non-sexual harassment in the workplace is a behavior such as racist or negative comments, and can also be constructed as or categorized as work harassment. Some examples can be offensive gestures, drawing, or clothing also constitute harassment. And you should address this sort of workplace bullying in the same way that you will sexual harassment, by reporting it at Human Resources, and if nothing is done, you can file a harassment claim with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I'd like to give you some extra examples to make me more clear about the non-sexual examples. It can be making negative comments about an employee on personal religious beliefs, using some racist phrases or nicknames, making remarks about an individual's skin's color or ethnic traits, can be making some offensive gestures, making offensive reference to an individual mental or physical disability, or wearing clothing that could be offensive to a particular ethnic group. We shall know that non-sexual harassment isn't limited to these examples, but it includes any comments, action, or type of behavior that is threatening, insulting, intimidating, or in a discriminatory way and unsafe the workplace environment. In second place, we have the sexual harassment in the workplace, the training of today, that it doesn't matter who makes the offense. It could be a manager, it could be a coworker, or even a non-employed, like some client, contractor, or vendor that comes to the organization. But if the person conducts create a hostile work environment, or make it difficult for an employee to work, or in some way interrupts an employee's success, it is considered unlawful harassment. Some examples can be sharing in sexual inappropriate images, videos, such as pornography or hilarious gifts with the coworkers, with your supervisors, with clients. Can be to sending suggestive letters notes, or email. Displaying inappropriate sexual images or posters in the workplace. Telling or sharing sexual jokes. Can be staring in a sexual, suggestive, or offensive manner. Making offensive comments about someone's sexual orientation or gender identity. And can be to inappropriate touching, including pitching, patting, rubbing, or purposeful brushing or against another people. These are just some examples of what can be sexual harassment in the workplace. But now I want to give you a true or false, and I want you to answer me. If an employee repeatedly makes sexual jokes near their cubicle and no one get involved in the conversation, complains, the company bears no responsibility. That's true or false? You have 20 seconds to think about the answer of these sentences. Okay, I want you to know that the answer is false. Why is false? Well, such behavior can be okay at a private happy hour if one there has a problem with it, but it's totally different if it's occurs in an area where everyone can hear it, like a lunchroom or an open work space. If this happened repeatedly and the Joker's manager failed to respond to the other workers' complaints, the company could become liable for a hostile work environment. If a supervisor is aware and don't do anything about this action, it's gonna cause a sexual harassment happen and don't prevent about it if doesn't do anything. So I want to show you a video that explain us better what can be the effects of sexual harassment in the workplace.
Effects of sexual harassment in the workplace. Sexual harassment is not just a little locker room talk, a compliment, innocent flirting, or an invitation to share a cup of coffee. Workplace harassment is a discriminatory pattern of behavior that creates a hostile work environment based on a protected class. It may involve verbal abuse and abuse of power, sexual quid pro quo, and assault, such as unwanted groping. Harassment in the workplace has negative effects on all workers, including decreased performance, low morale, and increased turnover. What is sexual harassment? Harassment is a form of employment discrimination that violates several federal and state laws. Sexual harassment is persistent, unwanted sexual advances, verbal abuse, and/or demands for sexual favors. Behavior becomes illegal when enduring the harassment is a condition of continued employment and creates an environment that is hostile or intimidating. If an employer has more than a handful of employees, it's likely harassment will be a problem. There were over 12,860 charges filed with the EEOC alleging sex-based harassment in 2016. 1 in 3 women face harassment in the workplace, yet 70% of women say they have never reported it. Effects of sexual harassment. Sexual harassment can affect everyone because it creates an environment that makes it harder for employees to succeed. The possible effects of sexual harassment in the workplace include emotional and physical issues. Victims of sexual harassment often suffer emotional and psychological harm, including stress, depression, and anxiety. They often experience decreased confidence and self-esteem. Physical health problems may arise, such as loss of sleep and appetite, weight fluctuations, nausea, and headaches. Professional and financial problems. Sexual harassment can also wreak havoc on a victim's job performance and career trajectory. Fear and decreased confidence can cause some people to withdraw from the workplace and disengage from coworkers. They are more likely to be tardy, absent, distracted, and neglect duties. If victims of sexual harassment report the harassment, they may suffer advancement setbacks, such as being passed over for promotions, being left out of key meetings, retaliation, and being labeled as a troublemaker. Financial problems like lost wages and unpaid leave are also possible. Decreased company productivity. Sexual harassment is also damaging to an organization. When a workplace is infected with discrimination and harassment, everyone suffers. The hostility created by harassment causes absenteeism, low morale, gossip, animosity, stress, and anxiety among staff. Low productivity is more common in environments with high rates of sexual harassment. Victims and witnesses of sexual harassment are more likely to quit, leading to high employee turnover and related hiring and training cost increases. A toxic environment will also make recruiting top talent more difficult. Lawsuit and reputation. A company's failure to adequately prevent and handle sexual harassment can result in expensive lawsuits. In the past decade, we have seen some eye-popping jury awards in sexual harassment cases. A jury awarded plaintiffs $17.4 million in a case filed by the EEOC involving rape and sexual harassment by 3 male supervisors at a Florida packing plant. And $18 million was awarded in the case against the New York Global Group CEO for retaliation against his former employee after she refused his advances. A highly publicized case of sexual harassment can also damage a company's reputation, resulting in lost business. Anti-harassment policy and training. Employers must institute anti-harassment programs that contribute to a welcoming culture, where everyone feels they are valuable team members, and also attract talented job applicants. A company harassment policy should define harassment and give examples, state that harassment is not tolerated, explain the harassment reporting system with the designated HR person for reporting claims, communicate the disciplinary consequences of harassment, outline the investigation and remediation process, state that retaliation against employees reporting harassment is prohibited. Employers must hold employees and themselves to high standards. Everyone deserves a workplace free from harmful harassment, and all employees should be expected to behave like professional adults while on the job. Not only could workplace harassment lead to expensive lawsuits, it creates a toxic culture that cripples team cohesion and harms productivity. Learn how to avoid these problems and more when you enroll with 360training.com today.
So knowing the effects of sexual harassment in the work, I want you to know that workplace sexual harassment is considered a form of sex discrimination. So sexual harassment is illegal across the country. That we see the federal law on the national laws apply only to employers with 15 or more employees, but every state might have better laws that cover smaller employees. We have the Equal Employment Opportunity Commissions that have the Civil Rights Act of the 1964. You can look that better on the internet. That give you the rights that you have in your workplace and your human rights as a person of your country. We have to know that retaliation is also illegal for employers to allow anyone to be sexually harassed at work by anyone else, regardless of sex, gender, or sexual orientation. And I want to give you an example of how the laws can change by state. In California, the law prohibits sexual harassment at work, and it have a program too to prevent it, but it doesn't limit it to 15 or more employees. This Fair Employment and Housing Act of the California law protects all workers. It can include independent work contracts, interns, volunteers, not just people who are officially classified as employees. You should know that in California, employers with 5 or more employees must provide sexual harassment prevention trainings to employees for maybe an hour, and supervisors should have this training of sexual harassment every 2 years for about 2 hours. Knowing this, if we know a little bit about the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, Its coverage only 15 or more employees, and we should note about the time limits to file charge. In the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is 180 days to file charge, and in the federal employees have only 45 days. In addition, we should note that the passage of the Civil Rights Act in the 1991 allows victims of sexual harassment to sue for compensatory damage for pain, suffering in cases where the employer acts with malice or reckless indifference to the rights of an individual. This sexual harassment can occur in a variety of circumstances. For example, the victim as well as the harasser may be a woman or a man. The victim does not have to be of the opposite sex. Second, the harasser can be the victim's supervisors, an agent of the employer, a supervisor in another area, a co-worker, or a non-employee. Third, the victim does not have to be the person harassed, but could be anyone affected by the offensive conduct. Another example can be unlawful sexual harassment may occur without economic injury to or discharge of the victim, and the harasser's conduct must be unwelcome. And everyone wants to know, what are my rights? First of all, a discriminatory-free environment. Your employer is required by law to provide a safe working environment that is not hostile, to be based on your sex or gender identity. Second, be told about your company's sexual harassment policies. Using the last state example, in California, your employer must have a written policy on harassment and must make sure every employee knows the policy exists and gets a copy. The policy shall be written in a language that employees understand. You have interplets to talk or speak out against sexual harassment. It can be with your human resources department. It can be with your supervisors. It can be with a co-worker. It can be in a law enforcement. And fourth, got to report the harassment. Again, it can be reported to human resource department, to your boss, or someone else at your company who has power. We highly recommend to report in writing, email, or letter, and making copies so you have proof later if you need it. And 5, file charges or sue. You can do it with your state department, your lawyer, or your Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's officers. But now, if you have been sexual harassed in your work environment, you can make it clear the unwelcome. So you can do this verbally, in person, or on the phone, or in writing. It can be by a letter, text message, or an email. If you do so in writing, keep copies in case you need to prove later. If you do so verbally, you may want to ask a trusted co-worker to go with you to serve as a witness. If you don't feel comfortable taking or talking or writing to the harasser directly, you should still keep in detailed notes about your interactions and experience. You have to look at your company's policies and complaint process. Again, most of the employer give you an employee manuals or a handbook when you are first hired. If you don't have it, you should get a copy or ask for a new one and write everything down. If you are gonna text it or send him an email, have copies. If you're gonna do it verbally, write everything that you talk about it or give a witness. Again, report the harassment to your boss or your human resource department. If you don't feel comfortable doing this, you can just go to a law enforcement, and they are gonna take the necessary steps to your safety. Talking about witness, if you have any witness, he or her can confront the harasser with you if that's gonna make you comfortable. The witness can document all the behavior with you and can give some follow-up in the victim of sexual harassment, giving us some support. And we shall know that employees have to report all inappropriate sexual conduct to the manager or to the human resource director as soon as possible. Management must be made aware of the situation so that it can take appropriate action. And managers must deal expeditiously and fairly whenever or not there has been a writing or formal complaints. They must take all complaints seriously, no matter how minor or who is involved, and they have to report all incidents to the Human Resource Development immediately to enable prompt this investigation. Just as we talked last, we have time limits. So in some cases, the manager is gonna separate the person involved, including the person who reports, is gonna investigate and take quick actions. If the employee doesn't do any of these, gonna have some consequences for the employer and for the manager. The employer may have to pay victims for lost wages and emotional damage. They also be forced to pay fines, change policies, be monitored, and take training seasons in some cases. What are the costs of sexual harassment? In the victims, the psychological suffering, including humiliation, reduces motivation, loss of self-esteem. They can also behavioral change, including isolation, deterioration of relationships, stress-related physical and mental illness, including drugs or alcohol abuse, and the victim foregoing the career opportunities. It can be leaving employment or committing suicide. The cause of sexual harassment in the employers can be the decreased enterprise productivity due to impaired judgment, compromised teamwork, dismotivation, absenteeism. No applicants will fill vacancies at workplace where they fear sexual harassment. And the progress and innovation within an enterprise are hindered when the environment is deficient in trust and team spirit because they fear about being sexual harassed. The cost of sexual harassment in the society can be a long-term rehabilitation cost for the reintegration of victims, unemployment, welfare benefits, and retraining, invalidating costs for those with impaired working capacities, legal and criminal justice expenses, and women's undetermined access to high status and well-paid jobs, traditionally male-dominated. What are the discipline? Employees who violate this policy are subject to appropriate discipline if an investigation results in a finding that this policy has been violated. The mandatory minimum discipline is a written reprimand. The discipline for very serious or repeat violation is termination of employment. Persons who violate this policy may also be subject to civil damage or criminal penalties. In a confidentiality, we shall know that all complaints are treated confidentially and information is disclosed strictly on a need-to-know basis. The identity of the complaints is usually revealed to the parties involved during the investigation, and the Human Resource Director takes the adequate step to ensure that the complaint is protected from retaliation during and after the investigation. All the information pertaining to sexual harassment complaints or investigation is maintained in secure files within the Human Resources Department. But what could happen if you do or file or report sexual harassment in your workplace? It can be a compensation for lost wages or other economic losses if the sexual harassment resulted in a loss of work or income. For example, you had to take a leave of absence because you were scared, you lost hours, you get fired or had no income for a while. In many cases, you lost your job and have not found one that pays you as much. You could also seek compensation for expenses related to any medical or health treatment you need or will need in the future because of sexual harassment or violations. The compensation for emotional distress and physical pain or suffering, which could include anguish, stress, anxiety, pain, and suffering, can be to loss of sleep, damage to your reputation in your work environment, in your family or friends, and loss of enjoyment of life resulting from harassment. The punitive damage, if you, for example, sue in the court and show that the employer acted with malice or show reckless indifference to your rights, you might be able to get the court or a jury to order that the employer pay punitive damage, which are meant to punish especially bad employers and send a warning message to the employers. The reinstatement, if you were fired or forced out because of the sexual harassment or retaliation, you should potentially get your job back. And of course, make your employer change their policies and practice if you sue or file a charge against them. You're gonna be making the workplace safe and fair for everyone, and to help ensure that others do not suffer the same thing you went through. So you never be afraid of saying no if you're having or sexual harassment in your work. We shall know that the body language talk can be no's. If the excuses, if you're saying someone to date you to the dinner to double intention and he know it or she know it, and they're gonna start making you some excuses that maybe are a no. If you ask something with a sexual direction and the person say maybe, that is a no. So you should stop. We should know that sexual harassment can occur in the workplace, in a work group, in your way to work, or in the office of a client. You can file if sexual harassment even if you accept to have sex or if you commit some acts. It doesn't matter if you after that you feel uncomfortable, you can file against sexual harassment. And if someone in the workplace treat you or force you to make a sexual act, it doesn't matter if it happened, you can still file against them. So according about what I've been talking about, human resources doesn't need to investigate if an employee complains that a coworker texted offensive photos to their personal devices outside of work hours. This is true or false. You have 20 seconds to think about it. And the answer is false. Why? We should know that companies can be held accountable for their workers' behavior regardless of where and when the potential harassment occurred and whether the offensive content appeared on an employee's own phone or tablet. Human resource professionals often question whenever they can ask to review devices that are in company property. If the behavior in question happened off-site. If the answer is yes, in this case, human resources has reasons to believe one employee acted inappropriately towards another. A review of the text says or should be part of your formal investigation. However, while a victim is likely willing to share, be mindful that there isn't any research if any employee refuses to produce text. In that case, move forward by collecting a statement from all parties involved. And I want you to know that anyone can be sexual harassed. Sexual harassment is a gender-neutral offense, at least in theory. Men can sexually harass women, and women can sexually harass men. However, statistics show that most sexual harassment claims uncharged are brought by women claiming that they were sexually harassed by men. But people of the same sex can also sexually harass each other, as long as the harassment is based on sex rather than sexual orientation, which is not protected characteristics under the Title 7. For example, if a man's co-worker constantly bombards him with sexually explicit photos of women, and this makes him uncomfortable, he might have sexual harassment claim. So we should answer this question very easy. Who could be sexually harasser? It can be everyone. It can be a supervisor, it can be a coworker, it can be a customer, it can be a contractor. Now that we know a little bit more about sexual harassment, the human resources department may need to tell an individual if his or her physical gestures, such as tight hugging, shoulder massage, are making others uncomfortable. This is true or false? The answer is true. Why? Because this falls under whether or not a responsible person finds that the behavior acceptable in the workplace. It's about having spatial awareness. So, while some employees will opt to tell a coworker directly if they don't like the way someone touched them, not everyone feels comfortable doing that, and thus may prefer to bring their concern to the human resource department. Some cases they take a big witness with them to talk with the harasser, and it's a human resources job to let the offender know the behavior is unwelcome. So there's a difference between giving a hug to say hello and rubbing someone's shoulder that is unwelcome. Most of the vulnerable workers to harassment can be women, colored women, and immigrants. I want to give you an example. Ms. Ars believes immigrants women are especially vulnerable to sexual harassment regardless of whether they have an employee-sponsored visa, a pending application to a spouse, or they work as domestic employees. And she has noticed in Miami at least that many Latin American immigrants almost take it for granted that they are going to have to deal with sexual harassment. Even through immigrants, women should not have to expect it. They are used to it in their home countries, so they don't even bat an eye about it when it happens in the United States. She also believes that immigrant women are not just subjects to harassment by their employers, but by customers as well. She gives us an example. She says, I have been seeing in the workplace, in a smaller coffee shops, restaurants, with their bosses and patrons, calling them in a derogatory way. But they don't have any offensive to say things like, whoa, you are looking good, mommy. I don't want to be called mommy, she said. I don't think it's very appropriate. But I want to give you another examples. This is Anna, and this is based on a case of the Erika Morales frontline that was raped on the night shift. And the case was on January 16 of the year 2018. She testify, I'm an undocumented immigrant and clean buildings at night. One night, my boss told me to clean the bathroom alone and follow me in. He pushed me against the wall and grabbed my breast. Luckily, I escaped. Later, he threatened me to have me deported if I didn't have sex with him. I'm terrified, she testified. Erika Morales worked as a night shift janitor. Her supervisor touched her and made sexual comments to her. She regularly asked him to stop, but he allowed it in response. One night, the supervisors asked Morales to go with him to the supply closet, where he cornered her, tried to remove her clothes against her will, touched her, and grabbed her by the hair. Morales quit a few days later. This is an example of sexual harassment. Another example can be Mike. He testified, I work on a construction site with a team of 5 men. They talk about their sexual experience through the day, which make me uncomfortable. I don't join in about any comments. But 2 guys give me a hard time and they say I'm not a real man. They also joke about me having sex with other men. This example is based on case of the 1998 of Onkel versus Sundower Offshore. In this plaintiff, a man alleged that his male co-workers regularly made unwelcome sexual comments and threats, escalating to physical and sexual assault. Plaintiff complained to his supervisor, but no action were taken to stop the harassment. Subsequently, the plaintiff quit his job and filed a complaint against the company claiming sexual harassment in the workplace. Some strategies to prevent sexual harassment in our workplace environment. It can be adopt a clear sexual harassment policy. The manager should train the employees and train supervisors and managers. Some states recommend to train employees 1 hour a year about sexual harassment, and supervisors and managers 2 hours a year or every 2 years. It's gonna be depending on the state. How do you report sexual harassment? You can go to the law enforcement when it comes to sexual assault or rape at work or off-site. On a business trip, for example, you might want to go directly to a law enforcement. You can report it according to your company policy. Companies will often have policies and instruction laid out about how to report sexual harassment. It can be a manual or a handbook. You can go to your union. If you're a member of it. You can also speak to a union representative. That is someone who can serve as the go-between the employee and the company. And you can file a claim with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission or your local agency. At any point, you can also choose to file a charge with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission or with a state or local fair employment practices agency. In fact, you will have to do so before you can file a lawsuit related to sexual harassment under federal law. Don't forget that there are deadlines, time limits. You have to file within 180 days or the last incident of harassment. And if you're on a state or local agency, you have 300 days to file. And that enforce you a similar law to help you. And according to statistics of sexual harassment claims received by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, it represents that more than 7,500 sexual harassment claims were filed with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission in 2018. This was a 14% increase from the prior year that was on 2010. So, due to the recent wave of sexual harassment accusations, many states are looking to go beyond federal regulations to prevent workplace sexual harassment. Some states have included sex in their discrimination laws as a protected class. but where you can find some help. You can contact the Office of Civil Rights or the Office of General Counsel. You can go to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission site. And I give you some numbers on a website, so you can go to the U.S. Department of State. There you can look for your state, and that site is going to give you the numbers and the emails of the office in your home state. And of course, I love to give facts every time about the theme. So I want you to know these facts about sexual harassment. For example, a survey published in Hong Kong in February 2007 showed that nearly 25% of workers interviewed was suffering sexual harassment, with 1/3 of them men. Among male workers, only 6.6% reported their grievance because they felt too embarrassed to face ridiculous to report sexual harassment. Another fact, according to 2004, the report issues in Italy is that 55.4% of women in the age of 14 to 59 group was reported having been victim of sexual harassment. 1 out of 3 female workers are subjected to sexual intimidation for career advances, with 65% of blackmailed weekly by the same harasser, usually a coworker or a supervisor. Furthermore, 55.6% of women subjected to sexual intimidation had resigned from the job about the sexual harassment. And the facts, doing a research showed that the type of women most vulnerable to sex harassment are young, financially dependent, single, or divorced, and with immigrant status. For men, those most harassed are young, gay, and members of ethnic or racial minorities. Another fact, it can be that sexual harassment between people of the same sex is a recent but growing trend. Well, and here I give you some common question about sexual harassment in the website. And I just selected 2 more. View it, and I want you to read it. The first question is, can I be punished for complaining about sexual harassment? The answer is no. The Title 7 expressly forbids an employee from retaliation against an individual for speaking out against harassment or filing a charge of harassment. It also protects from retaliation if you choose to participate in an investigation, proceeding, or hearing on behalf of a coworker whose rights you believe were violated. Don't be afraid to speak up if you or someone you know is suffering from workplace harassment. The second more common question viewed in the site was, I'm not sure if I want to file an Equal Employment Opportunity Commission claim or bring formal charges against my employer at this time. What steps can I take to protect myself in the meantime? First of all, they say keep a record of the discriminatory practice you believe are taking place. Check your company employee handbook. Keep timing in mind. In most cases, you have 180 days. We have to remember that we have time limits. Keep doing a good job and keep a record of your job. Keep some copies at home of your job evaluations and any letter or memo that shows that you do a good job at work. Seek support from friends and family. Harassment at work, it's a difficult thing to face alone, and the process of filing harassment can be very stressful. And you can contract an Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to speak with a counselor about your legal rights whenever you choose to file a claim or not. And the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission may investigate and or offer mediation service to help resolve the complaint. And always remember, everyone have rights of a workplace free of sexual harassment. And together we can create an environment of equality and respect. I'm grateful that all of you hear me at this point. I hope you learn a little bit more about sexual harassment in the workplace. If you have any doubt, any answers, you can let me any comments so I can answer it for you happily. Thank you.